You were warned about losing money. Almost nobody taught you how to make risk itself become an asset. That silence has quietly cost ordinary people decades of opportunity. Welcome to this audiobook. Today we are going to explore one of the least understood ideas in personal finance. Not because it is magical, but because it requires patience, discipline, and a way of thinking that most people are never encouraged to develop. This journey is educational, not financial advice. Its purpose is to help you think more clearly about protection, capital, and long-term wealth. Over the next chapters, you will discover why the wealthy often see insurance differently than everyone else. You will learn why protecting wealth is frequently more profitable than chasing it, how risk can become a source of leverage instead of fear, why cash flow matters more than appearances, and why the people who build fortunes often spend far more time preparing for storms than celebrating sunshine. There is one idea I want you to carry from the very beginning. The person who survives every financial storm is often richer than the person who wins every financial race. That sentence may not sound exciting at first. It becomes life-changing once you truly understand it. Because fortunes are rarely destroyed by a lack of opportunity. They are usually destroyed by one event that nobody expected. A lawsuit, a medical emergency, a business failure, a market crash, a divorce, a fire. One unexpected moment that arrives quietly after years of hard work. That is why this conversation is not really about insurance. It is about resilience. It is about building a life that keeps moving forward even when everything around you shakes. Stay with me, because before we examine the sophisticated strategies used by successful entrepreneurs and investors, we must first uncover the invisible habit that separates people who merely earn money from people who keep it for generations. There is an old image that has stayed with me for years. Two neighbors live on the same street. Both earn similar incomes. Both drive respectable cars. Both take vacations. From the outside, they appear almost identical. Then one difficult year arrives. A recession slows business. Unexpected expenses appear. A family member becomes ill. Repairs pile up. The first neighbor begins selling possessions. The second quietly writes checks. Nothing dramatic happens. No celebration, no announcement, no panic. Just calm decisions made from a position of preparation. Months later, the economy begins recovering. The first neighbor is exhausted from surviving. The second neighbor is ready to invest because opportunities always appear after uncertainty. This difference rarely begins with income. It begins with preparation. One person believed protection was an expense. The other understood protection was productive. That small shift changes almost every financial decision that follows. Most people are trained to think in straight lines. Work harder, earn more, spend carefully, save whatever remains, repeat. There is nothing wrong with this formula. It simply leaves out an important question. What happens when life refuses to follow your plan? Real life moves in circles, not straight lines. Businesses grow, then slow. Markets rise, then fall. Health improves, then weakens. Confidence expands, then contracts. Every season eventually changes. The wealthiest builders understand this rhythm. Instead of pretending uncertainty does not exist, they prepare for it so thoroughly that uncertainty begins working in their favor. That is a completely different philosophy. Fear tells you to avoid risk completely. Wisdom teaches you to understand risk deeply. One produces anxiety. The other creates confidence. Notice something interesting about the strongest bridges ever built. Engineers never hope the bridge experiences no pressure. They expect pressure. They calculate pressure. They prepare for pressure. That preparation allows millions of people to cross safely every single day. Financial strength works exactly the same way. The strongest financial lives are not designed for perfect years. They are designed for imperfect decades. When you begin seeing money this way, something unexpected happens. You stop asking only how much you can earn. You begin asking how much you can preserve. Then another question naturally appears. How can preservation itself create opportunity? That question has quietly guided some remarkable fortunes. Not because it is secret, because it is rarely discussed around ordinary dinner tables. Children grow up hearing conversations about salaries, rarely about liquidity. They hear discussions about spending, rarely about transferring wealth. They hear debates about investments, rarely about protecting investments before buying new ones. Every family passes down something. Some pass down money. Some pass down habits. Others unknowingly pass down financial blind spots. If every generation must rebuild from zero, eventually someone has to ask why. The answer is usually uncomfortable. Building wealth is only half the challenge. Keeping wealth requires an entirely different set of skills. Imagine carrying water across a desert. One traveler focuses only on finding more water. Another carefully seals every container before taking another step. Who reaches the destination with more? The answer seems obvious, yet financially, countless people spend their entire lives searching for more income while ignoring the leaks already draining their future. Those leaks rarely announce themselves. Small, unnecessary debts, poor legal protection, emotional spending, lack of emergency reserves, assets held carelessly, promises made without understanding consequences. Tiny cracks become enormous losses when enough years pass. This audiobook is about learning to notice those cracks while they are still whispers. Because prevention is usually invisible. You never receive applause for disasters that never happened. Nobody congratulates the homeowner whose house never burned because proper precautions existed. Nobody celebrates the entrepreneur whose company survived because difficult scenarios had already been planned. Preparation is quiet. Its rewards are often invisible, until the day everyone else is surprised. Then preparation suddenly looks like genius. It was never genius. It was disciplined practice long before it became necessary. That distinction matters. Many people chase excitement with money. The wealthy often chase durability. Excitement creates stories. Durability creates legacies. One evening, years ago, a small business owner sat alone after closing his office. The building was silent, except for the gentle hum of fluorescent lights. Invoices covered the desk. Payroll was due in 3 days. A customer had delayed payment. Equipment needed repairs. His daughter had recently started university. He stared at the numbers, wondering whether years of sacrifice had been enough. Then he opened another folder. Inside were plans he had almost forgotten. Cash reserves carefully accumulated. Protection he once considered unnecessary. Decisions made during profitable years when spending that money would have been much easier. He leaned back, not because every problem disappeared, because none of them became fatal. There is enormous peace in knowing one difficult season cannot erase 20 years of honest work. That peace has value, perhaps greater value than many financial statements can measure. Money is not only about purchasing things, it purchases time, it purchases options, it purchases calm thinking when others are forced into desperate choices. The greatest financial luxury is not owning more, it is needing less panic. As you continue listening, I invite you to think about your own life without judgment, not with guilt, not with regret, simply with curiosity. Where are you financially strong? Where are you financially exposed? Which decisions have been made because they truly fit your future? Which were made simply because everyone else seemed to be doing the same thing? Questions create better futures long before answers arrive. If this conversation helps you see money differently, I hope you stay with this journey until the very end. And if one idea resonates deeply, consider sharing it with someone whose future matters to you. Sometimes the greatest financial gift is not money itself. It is a new way of thinking before life demands it. The remarkable truth is that nearly every lasting fortune, whether built through entrepreneurship, investing, professional excellence, or family businesses, eventually reaches the same conclusion. Growth without protection is fragile. Protection without growth is incomplete. The real art lies in allowing both to strengthen each other. That balance is where our journey truly begins. Because before anyone can turn risk into opportunity, they must first recognize the invisible price they have been paying for certainty without ever realizing that somewhere, quietly beyond ordinary financial conversations, another way of thinking has existed all along, waiting for those patient enough to look beyond the obvious and ask a question that changes everything. The first financial lesson most people receive is how to earn. The second is how to spend responsibly. Almost nobody is taught the third lesson, how to become difficult to destroy. That may sound like an unusual goal until you notice how history actually works. Every generation experiences events that nobody predicted. Economies change direction. Industries disappear. Technology reshapes entire careers. Laws evolve. Markets reward one skill while quietly replacing another. The future has never promised stability. Yet millions of people build their financial lives as though tomorrow is guaranteed to resemble yesterday. The families who preserve wealth think differently. They ask a different question before making almost every major decision. What happens if everything goes wrong? Notice, they do not ask this because they are pessimistic. They ask because they understand probability. Pilots are not trained only for beautiful weather. Surgeons are not trained only for routine operations. Professional firefighters do not prepare only for small fires. The highest levels of professionalism are almost always measured by preparation for unlikely situations. Money deserves the same respect. One reason successful entrepreneurs often sleep better than equally wealthy professionals has very little to do with income. It has everything to do with structure. Structure creates confidence. Imagine building a beautiful home on unstable ground. From the street, the architecture may look extraordinary. Visitors compliment the windows. They admire the garden. They praise the expensive furniture. None of them notice the weak foundation. Then one season of heavy rain arrives. Suddenly, the decoration becomes irrelevant because the foundation was always the real investment. Your financial life follows exactly the same principle. Income is visible. Protection is invisible. Assets attract attention. Systems quietly preserve them. The world celebrates accumulation. Very few people celebrate resilience. And yet, Resilience is what allows accumulation to continue. Years ago, an investor was asked what his greatest financial achievement had been. The interviewer expected him to mention a company he sold or an investment that multiplied in value. Instead, he smiled and answered with something almost disappointing. He said his greatest achievement was never being forced to sell a valuable asset at the wrong time. That answer contains more wisdom than many best-selling financial books. Being forced is expensive. Being patient is profitable. Liquidity creates patience. Preparation creates liquidity. Protection makes preparation possible. Everything begins connecting. When people hear the word insurance, many immediately think about paperwork, premiums, contracts, and monthly payments. That is understandable. Most people encounter insurance only as consumers. But there is another perspective. Think about what an insurance company actually does. Every single day it studies uncertainty. It measures probability. It collects capital. It prepares for losses before losses occur. It earns trust because it promises stability during moments of chaos. Notice something remarkable. Its greatest strength is not predicting the future perfectly. Its greatest strength is surviving imperfect futures repeatedly. There is an important lesson hidden there. Financial success is rarely about making perfect predictions. It is about building a life that remains strong across many possible outcomes. People often ask why certain families continue creating wealth generation after generation. The answer is usually less glamorous than expected. They rarely depend on one source of income. They rarely depend on one investment. They rarely depend on one decision. Instead, they build layers. One layer supports another. Business income, investment income, cash reserves, protection strategies, legal planning, tax planning, education, relationships, character. Every layer strengthens the next. Remove enough layers and even impressive wealth becomes fragile. Build enough layers and ordinary wealth becomes surprisingly durable. Think of an old oak tree. Its beauty comes from what you can see. Its survival comes from what you cannot. Roots spread quietly for years before branches impress anyone. People admire the shade. The tree values the roots. Financial roots deserve equal attention. Emergency savings are roots. Knowledge is a root. Good habits are roots. Thoughtful protection is a root. Disciplined decision-making is a root. No photograph captures them, yet every future depends upon them. One of the biggest misunderstandings about wealth is believing rich people simply take bigger risks. Some certainly do. Many actually become wealthy because they learn which risks not to take. That distinction changes everything. There are courageous risks. There are careless risks. The difference is preparation. A skilled mountain climber does not appear fearless. Look closely. The ropes are inspected. The weather is studied. Equipment is tested. Emergency plans exist before the climb begins. From a distance, it looks adventurous. Up close, it looks disciplined. Successful financial lives operate much the same way. Outsiders often notice only bold investments. They rarely notice years of careful planning underneath those decisions. A business acquisition may appear daring. What they never see are the reserves prepared beforehand, the legal structures, the advisors, the contingency plans, the diversification. Confidence built on preparation feels completely different from confidence built on hope. Hope is emotional. Preparation is practical. One disappears under pressure. The other becomes stronger. There is another reason this matters. Stress changes decision-making. When money becomes scarce, people frequently abandon long-term thinking. Fear demands immediate relief. That is why financial pressure often creates expensive mistakes, selling investments during panic, borrowing at terrible terms, accepting unfair business offers, walking away from opportunities because survival leaves no room for patience. Protection is valuable partly because it protects your thinking. It gives your mind enough space to remain rational while others become emotional. That advantage compounds year after year. Consider two entrepreneurs facing the same unexpected recession. Orders decline, revenue falls, customers hesitate. The first owner has almost no reserves. Every decision becomes urgent. Every conversation carries fear. Every setback feels personal. The second owner prepared during prosperous years. Expenses were controlled. Emergency capital existed. Risk was thoughtfully managed. The recession is still painful, but panic never takes control. Both businesses experience difficulty. Only one loses the ability to think clearly. Clear thinking is often the most valuable financial asset anyone can possess. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you know one unexpected event cannot erase your future. That confidence changes how you negotiate, how you invest, how you build relationships, how patiently you wait, how wisely you say no. The strongest negotiating position is rarely having the most money. It is having enough stability to walk away. Walking away requires options. Options require preparation. Preparation begins long before anyone realizes it was necessary. Perhaps you have experienced a moment when everything seemed uncertain. Maybe it was losing a job, watching a business struggle, supporting aging parents, recovering after illness, facing an unexpected bill. Those moments teach lessons no classroom can provide. They remind us that certainty is temporary, adaptability is permanent. That realization is not depressing. It is liberating, because once you accept uncertainty as a natural part of life, you stop wasting energy trying to eliminate it completely. Instead, you begin building systems that remain strong despite it. That shift changes everything. You no longer ask whether difficult seasons will come. You ask whether your foundation is ready when they do. There is a profound difference. If this idea is changing the way you think, pause for a moment after this chapter and reflect on one question. What part of your financial life gives you genuine peace? And what part depends mostly on hope? Sometimes one honest answer becomes the beginning of an entirely different future. As we continue, we are about to step beyond ordinary ideas of saving and budgeting into a way of thinking that many accomplished business owners quietly adopt. Because once you understand why the wealthy spend so much time studying risk itself, another surprising realization begins to emerge. Risk is not always the enemy. Sometimes, when understood deeply enough, it becomes one of the most valuable assets you will ever learn to manage. The people who build lasting wealth eventually discover a strange truth. Money rewards those who respect uncertainty more than those who try to eliminate it. That sounds backward until you look at the world around you. Every business exists because someone solved a problem created by uncertainty. Hospitals exist because health is uncertain. Security companies exist because safety is uncertain. Farmers understand weather is uncertain. Engineers understand materials eventually fail. Airlines understand delays will happen. The strongest organizations on earth are not built on certainty. They are built on preparation. Yet many individuals still approach their financial lives as though careful planning somehow attracts bad luck. They avoid conversations about protection because those conversations feel uncomfortable. They postpone important decisions because nothing has gone wrong yet. They tell themselves they will organize everything after they become wealthier. But wealth rarely creates discipline. Discipline usually creates wealth. There is a simple image worth remembering. Picture two sailors preparing for the same voyage. One spends nearly every hour polishing the deck. The ship looks beautiful. Visitors admire it. The other spends just as much time inspecting the hull below the waterline. Nobody notices. It is dirty work, quiet work, often lonely work. Then the storm arrives. Suddenly, appearance has very little value. Integrity becomes everything. Financial lives have hulls too. Legal documents, emergency funds, insurance strategies, diversified income, estate planning, tax awareness, strong business agreements. These are rarely exciting dinner conversations. They are also the reason some families recover from setbacks while others spend decades rebuilding. One of the greatest myths surrounding wealthy people is that they constantly chase extraordinary returns. Many do something much less dramatic. They spend years reducing unnecessary risks before increasing potential rewards. Think about chess. Beginners search for spectacular moves. Masters quietly improve positions. Each careful decision makes future victories more likely. Their brilliance is rarely explosive. It is cumulative. Financial intelligence often works exactly the same way. The biggest advantage is not making one perfect investment. It is avoiding dozens of expensive mistakes. Imagine receiving an extra 10% every year. Most people would celebrate. Now imagine never suffering catastrophic losses. Over decades, the second advantage is often even greater than the first. Protection compounds, not only financially, emotionally, mentally, relationally. A person constantly living under financial pressure struggles to become fully creative. Fear consumes attention. Urgency narrows imagination. Survival leaves little room for vision. But when your foundation becomes stronger, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes available again. You notice opportunities others overlook because they are too busy escaping problems. You negotiate calmly because desperation is absent. You invest patiently because time is no longer your enemy. That emotional freedom has extraordinary economic value. It cannot always be measured on a balance sheet. Yet it quietly influences every important decision. A successful architect once explained why great buildings often appear simple. He said, "Complexity belongs inside the structure, not on the surface." The strongest designs hide enormous sophistication beneath clean lines. Financial lives deserve similar elegance. From the outside, your life does not need to appear complicated. Behind the scenes, however, every important system should support every other system. Income should strengthen savings. Savings should strengthen investments. Investments should strengthen protection. Protection should preserve future opportunities. Every piece should quietly reinforce the next. This is how resilience is built. Not through one brilliant decision, through hundreds of thoughtful ones. Consider a woman who spent 20 years building a successful family manufacturing company. She knew every machine, every employee, every supplier. She worked weekends, missed holidays, reinvested profits instead of buying luxury. Her business became profitable. Then one lawsuit threatened everything. The issue was eventually resolved. But afterward, she admitted something that changed the way she managed her company forever. She realized she had spent decades protecting production while spending very little time protecting what production had created. That realization transformed her thinking. Growth remained important. Protection became equally important. She often told younger entrepreneurs something beautiful. She would say that building wealth is like carrying water up a mountain. You work incredibly hard for every bucket. Why would you climb carelessly once you finally have it? Those words deserve reflection. People usually admire ambition. Wisdom quietly admires stewardship. Stewardship is an ancient idea that still matters profoundly today. It means treating resources with respect, not because they define your worth, because they represent possibilities. Every dollar carefully protected preserves future choices, future education, future generosity, future investments, future freedom. Money kept alive continues serving its purpose. Money unnecessarily destroyed loses every opportunity it might have created. This is why emotionally mature investors often appear almost boring. They rarely panic. They rarely celebrate excessively. They rarely change direction because headlines become dramatic. Their confidence comes from systems rather than emotions. Markets fluctuate. Their principles remain steady. Businesses expand and contract. Their discipline remains steady. Public opinion changes constantly. Their preparation remains steady. Consistency quietly defeats intensity over long periods of time. The financial world often celebrates speed. Real wealth frequently rewards endurance. Think about forests. The tallest trees are rarely the fastest growing. They survive because, year after year, they become more deeply rooted. Storm after storm strengthens them. Their greatness is measured in decades rather than seasons. Financial strength deserves the same patience. Many people underestimate how dramatically one protected decade changes the next. A decade without catastrophic financial mistakes. A decade of consistent saving. A decade of thoughtful planning. A decade of protecting what matters most. Those 10 years often create momentum impossible to appreciate while living through them. Compounding is not merely mathematical, it is psychological. Every wise decision increases confidence. Confidence encourages discipline. Discipline improves future decisions. Eventually, your habits begin producing results that appear extraordinary to outsiders. Yet you know the truth. Nothing happened overnight. Everything accumulated quietly. Perhaps the most valuable lesson hidden inside successful financial lives is this: security and opportunity are not enemies. Most people believe they must choose one, either play safely or pursue growth. The wealthiest builders often refuse that false choice. They create structures where protection allows greater confidence to pursue opportunity. Because the stronger the foundation becomes, the farther they are willing to build upward. There is another image I want you to carry. Stand beside a river after heavy rain. The water moves quickly. Branches rush past. Leaves disappear around the bend. Everything appears urgent. Now look beneath the surface. The riverbed barely moves. The current is dramatic. The foundation remains steady. Your financial life should resemble the riverbed more than the current. News changes, technology changes, markets change, politics changes, public opinion changes. Principles do not. Preparation does not. Discipline does not. Thoughtful protection does not. When those remain steady, temporary turbulence becomes much less frightening. If this chapter has encouraged you to think differently, I hope you continue this journey with an open mind. And if someone close to you is working hard to build a future, consider sharing these ideas with them. Sometimes the greatest expression of care is helping another person avoid a mistake before life forces the lesson. Because we have only been examining the philosophy behind lasting wealth. Soon, we will begin exploring one of the most overlooked shifts successful entrepreneurs make. The moment they stop seeing insurance merely as a bill to be paid and begin understanding why, in the hands of disciplined thinkers, properly structured protection can quietly become one more tool that supports cash flow, preserves opportunity, and transforms uncertainty from something feared into something patiently managed with remarkable confidence as the years unfold. There comes a moment in nearly every successful entrepreneur's journey when a quiet realization changes the way every future decision is made. Until that moment, insurance feels like a cost. After that moment, protection becomes infrastructure. Think about the difference. When you buy groceries, the money is gone. When you pay for entertainment, the experience passes. But when you build infrastructure, you are creating something that allows future growth. Roads allow commerce. Electricity allows production. Reliable internet allows businesses to serve customers around the world. Infrastructure rarely produces applause. It quietly makes everything else possible. The wealthiest business owners often begin seeing financial protection through that same lens. Not as something exciting, as something foundational. A skyscraper does not apologize for having deep foundations. It depends on them. The taller the building, the deeper the support beneath it. The same principle applies to wealth. Small fortunes may survive casual planning. Large fortunes almost never do. As assets grow, complexity grows alongside them. Responsibilities expand. Employees depend on decisions. Families rely on stability. Communities benefit from successful businesses continuing to operate. Protection becomes less about fear and more about responsibility. That is a profound shift. Responsibility changes the questions you ask. Instead of asking how little protection you can get away with, you begin asking what level of preparation allows everyone connected to your life to remain secure if something unexpected occurs. Notice how different those two mindsets feel. One asks for the cheapest answer. The other asks for the strongest structure. Strength usually costs something. Weakness almost always costs more. There is an old saying among experienced builders: cheap construction becomes expensive maintenance. The same is often true financially. Many expensive crises began as inexpensive decisions postponed for too long. The contract that was never reviewed. The emergency reserve that never reached its target. The business agreement sealed only with a handshake. The assumption that tomorrow would resemble today. Time quietly magnifies every neglected detail. That is why thoughtful people become students of systems rather than students of luck. Luck is welcomed. Systems are trusted. A fortunate year can increase wealth. A resilient system can preserve generations. Imagine two orchards planted on neighboring hillsides. Both receive sunshine. Both receive rain. Both begin with healthy trees. The first farmer spends every season searching for ways to make the fruit appear larger. The second spends equal attention caring for the soil. Visitors notice only the fruit. The farmer understands the soil. Years later, drought arrives. The orchard with deep, healthy soil survives. The other struggles despite producing beautiful harvests in easier years. Protection is the soil beneath financial success. It is rarely admired during prosperous seasons. Its value becomes undeniable when conditions become difficult. One experienced investor once shared a sentence that remained with everyone in the room. He said the goal is not simply to become wealthy. The goal is to become difficult to bankrupt. There is tremendous wisdom hidden inside those words. Bankruptcy is not always legal. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes it is physical. Sometimes it is relational. Sometimes it is the exhaustion that comes from carrying unnecessary risk for too many years. Financial resilience supports every other form of resilience. It allows marriages to breathe, businesses to adapt, children to pursue opportunities, communities to remain employed. Money reaches far beyond numbers when managed wisely. One reason financially successful families often appear unusually calm is that they have practiced making important decisions before urgency forces them. Calm is not their personality. It is the result of preparation. Preparation reduces chaos. Chaos magnifies fear. Fear clouds judgment. Judgment determines outcomes. Everything is connected. You may wonder why this matters so much if you are still building your first meaningful level of wealth. In many ways, it matters even more. Small habits become large patterns. The way you manage $1,000 influences how you will eventually manage $1 million. Discipline does not suddenly appear because balances become larger. Character simply becomes more visible. A person who constantly ignores risk while resources are limited rarely becomes cautious once abundance arrives. Likewise, someone who learns thoughtful stewardship early often discovers that opportunities naturally begin trusting them with greater responsibility. The world quietly rewards reliability. Banks appreciate it. Business partners appreciate it. Investors appreciate it. Families certainly appreciate it. Reliability is a financial asset. Perhaps not one that appears on a balance sheet. Yet it opens doors that numbers alone never could. Think about the people whose advice you value most. Usually, they are not the loudest voices. They are the most consistent. They have seen difficult seasons without abandoning their principles. Money works much the same way. Consistency often produces results that excitement never will. This is also where many people misunderstand risk itself. Risk is not automatically dangerous. Unexamined risk is dangerous. Every worthwhile achievement contains uncertainty. Starting a company, buying a home, changing careers, investing for the future. Even falling in love requires vulnerability. The goal is never eliminating uncertainty. The goal is entering uncertainty prepared. That distinction separates gamblers from builders. A gambler depends on outcomes. A builder depends on preparation. Sometimes both experience success. Only one can repeat it consistently. As your understanding grows, you begin noticing that accomplished entrepreneurs spend enormous energy asking practical questions. If this plan fails, what happens? If revenue slows, how long can we continue? If a key employee leaves, what systems remain? If regulations change, how quickly can we adapt? These questions are not signs of pessimism. They are evidence of leadership. Leadership accepts responsibility before responsibility becomes visible. There is another reason preparation deserves respect. It protects your future self. Imagine writing a letter to yourself 10 years from now. What would that future version thank you for? Buying another luxury item? Probably not. Taking one unnecessary financial gamble? Unlikely. Creating thoughtful reserves, learning continuously, protecting your family, building wisely, maintaining integrity. Those are the decisions future gratitude is built upon. The fascinating thing about long-term wealth is that many of its greatest victories never appear dramatic. A disaster avoided, a lawsuit survived, a business preserved, an inheritance transferred smoothly, a retirement lived with dignity instead of anxiety. Quiet victories rarely make headlines. They often define entire lives. If today's ideas have helped you look beyond quick financial wins and toward something more enduring, take a moment later to reflect on the systems you are already building. The strongest future usually begins with one thoughtful improvement, repeated consistently. And if these conversations are helping reshape your perspective, I would love for you to continue this journey with us, because each chapter is designed to build carefully upon the last. Soon we will arrive at one of the most misunderstood principles in modern finance. Not a shortcut, not a loophole, not a promise of effortless riches. A framework for understanding why some people quietly arrange their financial lives so that protection, liquidity, patience, and opportunity begin supporting one another in ways that seem almost invisible until years of disciplined decisions finally reveal the remarkable power of thinking several moves ahead instead of merely reacting to whatever today happens to bring. One of the greatest financial advantages in life is invisible. It cannot be photographed. It rarely becomes the subject of conversation. It almost never appears on social media. It is the ability to wait. Patience sounds ordinary until you realize how expensive impatience can become. People purchase investments at emotional highs because they fear missing out. They sell during moments of panic because they fear losing everything. They accept unfavorable business deals because bills are approaching faster than opportunity. They borrow under terrible conditions because they have no alternative. None of these decisions begin with a lack of intelligence. Most begin with a lack of options. And that is where thoughtful financial protection reveals one of its greatest strengths. It creates options. Options create patience. Patience creates better decisions. Better decisions compound into extraordinary outcomes over time. Think about an experienced hunter walking through a forest. He does not chase every sound. He understands movement alone is not progress. He waits, he observes, he studies patterns. His patience is not inactivity. It is disciplined preparation. Financial wisdom often asks for the same restraint. The world rewards speed in many situations. It rewards patience surprisingly often when money is involved. Years ago, a young entrepreneur met an older business owner whose company had survived 4 recessions. Curious, the younger man asked what secret had allowed the business to continue while so many competitors disappeared. He expected an answer about marketing or innovation. Instead, the older man quietly smiled. He said something unforgettable. He explained that during prosperous years, he always prepared as though difficult years would eventually return. Then, during difficult years, he behaved as though prosperity would eventually return. That balance kept fear from controlling him in either direction. Success never made him careless. Difficulty never made him hopeless. That is emotional discipline. It is also financial discipline. Many fortunes disappear because people confuse temporary conditions with permanent reality. A booming economy feels permanent. It never is. A recession feels endless. It never is. Markets move, industries evolve, technology changes, human nature remains remarkably consistent. People become overconfident near peaks. They become overly fearful near valleys. Those capable of thinking beyond the emotional moment usually make the strongest long-term decisions. This is one reason liquidity has always been treasured by disciplined investors. Liquidity is not exciting. It does not attract admiration at parties, yet it provides something priceless: freedom to choose. Imagine walking into an antique market. Hundreds of ordinary objects surround you. Then suddenly, someone offers an extraordinary piece at an incredible price because they urgently need cash. Who benefits? Usually the person already prepared. Opportunities often arrive disguised as someone else's urgency. Only prepared people can respond. Preparation allows timing. Timing often creates wealth. This is why experienced investors frequently say cash is not idle. Cash is patient. It waits for opportunities instead of forcing them. That perspective changes everything. Instead of feeling pressured to make constant moves, you begin appreciating the strength of selective action. Nature teaches this lesson beautifully. An eagle does not flap constantly. It studies air currents. It waits for the right moment. Then it moves with remarkable efficiency. Its strength comes not only from power, it comes from timing. Financial decisions deserve similar wisdom. Every dollar has a purpose. Some dollars should work aggressively. Others should preserve stability. Some should remain available for opportunities not yet visible. Balance matters. Too much caution limits growth. Too much aggression destroys resilience. Maturity learns to respect both. There is another subtle difference between those who build wealth and those who constantly chase it. Builders think in decades. Chasers think in headlines. Builders ask what decisions will still look wise 20 years from now. Chasers ask what appears exciting this week. Neither approach feels dramatic while you're living it. The difference becomes astonishing after enough time passes. Compounding rewards consistency with almost unfair generosity. One thoughtful decision repeated every year eventually outweighs dozens of emotional decisions made impulsively. Think about exercise. Nobody becomes healthy after one perfect workout. Nobody becomes unhealthy after one missed day. Patterns matter far more than isolated moments. Financial lives obey the same principle. A lifetime of thoughtful preparation quietly outweighs occasional brilliance. One of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding wealth is believing successful people possess extraordinary certainty. In reality, many simply become comfortable making decisions despite uncertainty. They know they cannot predict every outcome, so they strengthen every controllable variable. They improve knowledge. They reduce unnecessary debt. They protect important assets. They diversify intelligently. They maintain liquidity. They build trusted relationships. Then they move forward, not because uncertainty disappeared, because preparation increased confidence. Confidence rooted in preparation is remarkably different from confidence rooted in optimism alone. Optimism says everything will probably work out. Preparation says if several things go wrong, I can still continue. That second mindset is incredibly powerful. It protects not only money, it protects identity. Many people attach their self-worth to uninterrupted success. When setbacks arrive, they begin questioning themselves. Prepared individuals experience disappointment too, but setbacks remain events. They do not become definitions. That emotional distinction often determines whether someone eventually recovers stronger or remains trapped by one difficult chapter. The wealthiest families often understand another important truth. Money should reduce unnecessary suffering, not eliminate meaningful effort. Protection should create courage, not complacency. Resources should increase responsibility, not entitlement. When these principles remain aligned, wealth becomes a tool rather than a master. One evening, a grandfather sat beside his grandson overlooking fields that had belonged to their family for generations. The boy asked how the family had managed to keep the land when so many neighboring farms had eventually been sold. The old man did not mention extraordinary harvests. He did not mention lucky investments. He simply looked across the fields and answered quietly. He said every generation tried to leave the farm slightly stronger than they received it. Not dramatically different, just slightly stronger. A repaired fence, better irrigation, healthier soil, less debt, better planning, enough reserves for difficult years. Every generation added another stone to the foundation. Eventually, those small improvements became something outsiders called success. That story is not really about farming, it is about stewardship. It is about understanding that wealth is often preserved through quiet improvements rather than spectacular victories. Perhaps that is one of the most encouraging truths in personal finance. You do not need to transform your future overnight. You need to improve your systems consistently. One stronger habit, one wiser decision, one better question, one unnecessary risk removed, one additional layer of preparation. Those small adjustments rarely feel life-changing in the moment. Years later, they become almost impossible to separate from the life they quietly created. If this conversation has encouraged you to slow down and think more intentionally about your financial future, I invite you to carry one question with you after today's chapter. Are your current decisions buying temporary excitement, or are they quietly purchasing greater freedom for the person you will become years from now? Sometimes the answer to that single question reshapes every financial choice that follows. Because the next idea is where many thoughtful entrepreneurs begin seeing an entirely different picture. They stop asking only how to earn more money. They begin asking how every dollar already under their control can perform more than one job at the same time. And once you begin thinking that way, ordinary financial planning starts evolving into something far more powerful, where protection, liquidity, flexibility, and opportunity no longer compete with one another, but gradually begin working together like the carefully synchronized parts of a well-designed engine, each strengthening the next with quiet precision. There is a question that quietly separates people who build financial freedom from those who spend their entire lives chasing it. When a dollar enters your life, how many jobs does it perform before it leaves? For many people, the answer is simple. One, they earn it. They spend it. The story ends there. But disciplined wealth builders begin asking a different question. Can this same dollar protect my family, strengthen my future, preserve opportunity, and still remain useful tomorrow? That is not greed. It is efficiency. Nature has always rewarded efficiency. The human heart performs countless tasks every minute without asking for recognition. It pumps blood, delivers oxygen, removes waste, maintains rhythm. One system supports many others. Healthy financial systems often work the same way. Each decision strengthens several areas of life, instead of serving only one. This is why experienced business owners spend surprisingly little time asking whether a financial tool is good or bad. Instead, they ask a more intelligent question. For what purpose? A hammer is wonderful for building, terrible for writing. A ship is extraordinary on water, completely useless in a desert. Financial tools deserve the same perspective. There are no perfect tools, only appropriate ones. One of the reasons insurance becomes misunderstood is because people compare completely different purposes. Someone protecting a young family has different priorities from someone preserving a mature business. An entrepreneur managing employees thinks differently from someone planning retirement. A person beginning their career has different needs than someone transferring wealth to grandchildren. Wisdom begins when comparison ends. Good financial planning is personal. It reflects values, responsibilities, goals, time horizons, not trends, not advertisements, not what everyone else happens to be doing this year. One of the most overlooked characteristics of financially successful people is that they become comfortable saying no. No to unnecessary complexity. No to emotional purchases. No to investments they do not understand. No to opportunities that demand abandoning their principles. Every meaningful yes requires many thoughtful no answers. Imagine walking through a beautiful garden. Hundreds of seeds could be planted, yet the experienced gardener understands that every new plant requires water, nutrients, sunlight, and attention. More is not always better. The healthiest garden often grows because someone chose carefully. Money works much the same way. Every investment requires attention. Every business requires energy. Every obligation consumes time. Disciplined people understand that protecting focus is often just as important as protecting capital. One entrepreneur described his financial strategy using an image that stayed with me. He said he wanted every dollar to behave like a trusted employee. Each one should report to work every day. Each should understand its assignment. Some employees create growth. Some maintain operations. Some solve emergencies. Some protect the company from unnecessary danger. No employee is expected to perform every task, but every employee has purpose. Imagine seeing your money that way. Instead of wondering where it disappeared, you begin assigning responsibilities. Emergency reserves preserve stability. Long-term investments pursue growth. Education increases future earning ability. Protection shields what already exists. Charitable giving reflects personal values. Every dollar receives direction before emotion has a chance to redirect it. Direction creates intentional living. Without direction, money tends to follow convenience. Convenience is comfortable. Intentionality builds futures. This is one reason written financial plans often outperform unwritten hopes. Thoughts change. Emotions fluctuate. Written principles quietly remain. When difficult moments arrive, they remind you who you intended to become before fear entered the room. Years ago, an experienced pilot was asked how he remained calm during turbulence. He answered that calm does not begin in the storm, it begins in training. Every emergency procedure had already been practiced so many times that panic became unnecessary. Financial resilience develops exactly the same way. You prepare while life feels ordinary. You organize while pressure is low. You ask difficult questions before circumstances force uncomfortable answers. Preparation transforms emergencies into situations instead of disasters. There is another lesson hidden inside this philosophy. Not every return is measured in percentages. Some returns are measured in sleep, some in peace, some in stronger marriages, some in children growing up without constant financial anxiety, filling the home. Money affects emotions whether we acknowledge it or not. Financial uncertainty quietly enters conversations. It changes tone. Patience shortens. Small disagreements become larger because stress magnifies everything it touches. Reducing unnecessary financial pressure therefore creates returns far beyond numbers. The strongest financial decisions often produce emotional dividends. That is rarely discussed, perhaps because those dividends cannot be displayed on a spreadsheet. Yet families experience them every day. Think about a home where bills are planned rather than feared, where emergencies create inconvenience instead of panic, where opportunities can be discussed calmly instead of rejected immediately because resources are unavailable. That environment changes children, it changes relationships, it changes confidence. Preparation quietly becomes part of family culture. Culture is one of the greatest inheritances anyone can leave. Money can disappear. Character tends to remain. Habits often survive generations. This explains why certain families repeatedly rebuild after setbacks. Their greatest inheritance was never the money itself. It was the thinking that created it, the habit of planning, the discipline of protecting, the patience of waiting, the humility of continuing to learn. Those qualities remain valuable in every economy. Technology may transform industries, artificial intelligence may reshape careers, markets may evolve faster than ever before. Human wisdom remains remarkably consistent. Prepare, adapt, protect, learn, repeat. That rhythm has guided successful builders for centuries. It will likely continue doing so long after today's headlines disappear. Sometimes people become discouraged because they compare their beginning with someone else's mature success. They see established businesses, large investment portfolios, financial independence. They rarely see 30 years of disciplined decisions hiding beneath the surface. Every mighty oak once fit inside a person's hand. Every respected company once served its first customer. Every lasting fortune once began with someone choosing preparation over impulse. The beginning is never glamorous. That is why so many people abandon it too early. The invisible years produce the visible decades. Never underestimate quiet progress. A single improved financial habit repeated consistently for 10 years often accomplishes more than dramatic changes maintained for only a month. The world celebrates dramatic transformations. Reality usually rewards sustainable ones. As you continue listening, remember that this audiobook is not asking you to become fearful of uncertainty. It is inviting you to become stronger than uncertainty. There is a profound difference. Fear shrinks possibilities. Preparation expands them. Fear freezes action. Preparation guides action. Fear focuses on what might be lost. Preparation focuses on what can still be built regardless of changing conditions. That shift alone can change an entire financial life. If today's conversation has encouraged you to think beyond income and toward lasting stewardship, keep carrying these ideas forward. Sometimes transformation begins not with earning more, but with understanding more deeply what every financial decision is truly accomplishing. The strongest wealth is rarely built by accident. It grows through clarity, patience, and purposeful action repeated long after the excitement of beginning has faded. And now we arrive at a turning point, because once you understand how disciplined people assign multiple purposes to every dollar, another fascinating realization begins to emerge. The true secret has never been finding perfect investments. It has been designing a financial life where every carefully chosen piece strengthens every other piece, creating a system so resilient that even difficult seasons become opportunities to grow wiser, steadier, and ultimately stronger than before. There is a dangerous illusion that quietly follows people throughout their financial lives. The illusion is that wealth is created only by what you earn. In reality, lasting wealth is shaped just as much by what you keep, what you protect, and what you allow to continue working long after today's paycheck has been spent. Think about a river flowing through a valley. Most people pay attention to the water rushing downstream. Very few notice the mountain snow that quietly feeds it every season. The visible current exists because of an invisible source. Financial abundance works the same way. Visible success usually depends upon invisible habits, disciplined planning, measured decisions, prepared reserves, thoughtful protection. The world applauds the harvest. Wisdom studies the roots. There is a phrase often repeated in business circles. Cash flow is the lifeblood of an enterprise. That statement deserves deeper reflection. Businesses rarely fail because they lack ideas. Many fail because they run out of time. Time is purchased with liquidity. Liquidity is protected through preparation. Preparation allows recovery. Recovery creates survival. Survival creates future opportunity. Everything connects. Imagine two companies entering the exact same economic slowdown. Both employ talented people. Both produce excellent products. Both have loyal customers. The first company expanded rapidly during prosperous years, assuming growth would continue forever. Every available dollar was committed. Margins became thin. Reserves disappeared. When sales slowed, every week became a race against unpaid invoices. Every decision became reactive. The second company also pursued growth, but its leaders never confused optimism with certainty. They invested, they expanded, yet they maintained flexibility. Cash reserves existed. Credit was managed carefully. Protection had been reviewed regularly. When difficult months arrived, they were uncomfortable, but they were not fatal. One company spent its energy surviving. The other spent its energy adapting. Adaptation almost always outperforms desperation. This is why experienced entrepreneurs often say the goal is not simply to maximize profit. The goal is to maximize endurance. A business that survives 10 years usually sees opportunities unavailable during its first 2. A family that preserves wealth across decades benefits from compounding most people never experience. A patient investor witnesses cycles that impatient investors never stay long enough to enjoy. Longevity itself becomes an advantage. Nature teaches this lesson repeatedly. The oldest forests are not made entirely of the fastest growing trees. Many survive because they learned how to endure every season. The harsh winters, the dry summers, the storms, the fires. Growth and resilience develop together. One without the other would never have been enough. Financial lives deserve the same balance. Growth without resilience eventually becomes fragile. Resilience without growth slowly loses purchasing power. Wisdom asks both to work together. One thoughtful advisor once compared money to a team of skilled craftsmen building a cathedral. One worker lays foundations, another shapes stone, another installs windows, another protects the roof. If every craftsman attempted the same task, The cathedral would never be completed. Financial resources deserve similar specialization. Some resources should remain liquid. Some should pursue long-term appreciation. Some should strengthen education. Some should reduce taxes legally and responsibly. Some should provide protection against events too significant to ignore. Every purpose strengthens the whole structure. The mistake many people make is asking one financial tool to solve every problem. No single investment can replace discipline. No insurance policy replaces wise spending. No savings account replaces earning ability. No business replaces character. Strong financial lives resemble orchestras, different instruments performing different roles while creating one beautiful outcome together. This perspective changes how you evaluate decisions. Instead of asking whether something produces the highest return, you begin asking what role it serves inside your overall life. Does it create flexibility? Does it reduce unnecessary exposure? Does it strengthen future opportunities? Does it align with your values? Financial maturity often means asking better questions rather than chasing faster answers. There is another habit quietly practiced by many successful families. They regularly review their financial lives before problems demand attention. Most people visit a doctor only after symptoms appear. Healthy organizations schedule checkups before emergencies develop. The same principle belongs in personal finance. Review protection, review savings, review investments, review legal documents, review goals. Life changes, families grow, businesses evolve, children become adults, parents age, responsibilities expand, plans should evolve alongside reality. Stagnant plans rarely serve dynamic lives. One executive described this process beautifully. He said every year he conducted a conversation with his future self. He would ask whether the person he hoped to become would thank him for the decisions currently being made. That simple habit transformed his priorities. He stopped making decisions only for immediate comfort. He began making them for future freedom. That shift changed everything. Perhaps the greatest financial gift anyone can receive is not a large inheritance. It is the ability to think beyond immediate gratification. Modern life constantly encourages urgency, instant delivery, instant entertainment, instant opinions, instant reactions. Real wealth often grows in exactly the opposite direction. Slowly, patiently, deliberately, quietly. A vineyard does not produce extraordinary wine because someone hurried the grapes. Quality often requires seasons that cannot be rushed. Financial wisdom shares that same rhythm. Compounding cannot be hurried. Trust cannot be hurried. Character cannot be hurried. Preparation cannot be hurried. Yet each quietly rewards those willing to respect time. One of the most comforting truths about disciplined financial planning is that perfection is unnecessary. Nobody predicts every challenge. Nobody avoids every mistake. Nobody builds an entirely risk-free life. The objective has never been perfection. It has always been progress. One wiser decision than last year, one stronger habit, one additional layer of preparation, one unnecessary expense removed, one meaningful conversation started. These improvements appear small individually. Together they become transformative. A captain steering a ship across an ocean rarely changes direction dramatically. Tiny adjustments repeated consistently eventually determine the final destination. Financial lives follow exactly the same principle. The future is often shaped by corrections so small they seem insignificant while they are happening. Years later, they become impossible to separate from success itself. As artificial intelligence, automation, and rapidly changing industries continue reshaping the global economy, one truth becomes even more valuable. Skills may change, technologies may evolve, markets will certainly transform. The principles of resilience remain astonishingly stable. Protect what matters. Stay adaptable. Continue learning. Maintain liquidity. Respect uncertainty. Think long-term. These ideas served thoughtful builders generations ago. They continue serving them today. They will likely remain valuable long after today's innovations become tomorrow's history. If you have followed this journey from the beginning, perhaps you are beginning to notice that the real secret has never been hidden inside complicated financial products. It has been hidden inside a disciplined way of thinking. Products change, principles endure, strategies evolve, wisdom adapts them responsibly. The strongest financial lives are not assembled through luck. They are designed with intention. Every thoughtful decision becomes another brick. Every disciplined habit becomes another beam. Every layer of protection becomes another pillar, capable of carrying greater opportunity in the years ahead. Take a quiet moment after this chapter to ask yourself one question. If an unexpected storm arrived next year, would your current financial structure allow you to think clearly, act patiently, and continue moving forward? That question is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create preparation. And preparation has always been one of the most valuable investments a person can make, because we are about to explore perhaps the deepest lesson of all. The people who appear remarkably fortunate are often those who spent years quietly preparing for possibilities nobody else believed were worth considering until the day preparation stopped looking cautious and started looking extraordinary. There is a moment in every meaningful journey when information becomes transformation. It happens quietly, not because you suddenly discover a secret that nobody else knows, but because ideas you once understood with your mind finally settle into your character. That is where real wealth begins, not inside a bank account, inside a pattern of thinking that influences every future decision. Look back over your own life for a moment. Think about the moments that truly changed you. Perhaps it was losing a job you believed was permanent. Perhaps it was watching someone you admired rebuild after failure. Perhaps it was becoming a parent and realizing your decisions no longer affected only you. Or perhaps it was simply one quiet evening when you looked at your financial life honestly for the first time. Growth rarely arrives with fireworks. It usually arrives with clarity. And clarity almost always begins with one uncomfortable question. What am I pretending not to see? For some people, the answer is unnecessary spending. For others, it is avoiding conversations about debt. For others, it is believing higher income alone will eventually solve every financial problem. Income solves many problems. Structure solves many more. Imagine constructing a magnificent library filled with priceless books. Every shelf is crafted beautifully. Every volume represents years of knowledge. Then someone forgets to build a roof. For a while, everything appears perfect. Visitors admire the collection. The owner feels proud. Then the first heavy rain arrives. Months of neglect accomplish what years of effort never intended. The books were valuable. The structure protecting them was even more valuable. Money deserves the same perspective. Your investments matter. The systems protecting them matter just as much. One reason disciplined people become increasingly confident with age is not because life becomes easier. Life rarely does. It is because they spend years reducing avoidable uncertainty. Every thoughtful decision removes one unnecessary source of future stress. Every emergency fund reduces panic. Every carefully reviewed agreement removes hidden confusion. Every important conversation held before a crisis strengthens relationships when challenges eventually arrive. Prepared lives often appear fortunate. What people call luck is frequently the visible result of invisible preparation. Think about an experienced orchestra conductor. Before the audience hears a single beautiful note, hundreds of small details have already been handled. Instruments tuned, music rehearsed, timing perfected. Every musician understands their role. When the performance begins, it appears effortless. The audience experiences beauty. The conductor remembers preparation. Financial harmony follows exactly the same principle. From the outside, some families appear naturally organized. Businesses appear remarkably stable. Investors appear unusually calm. Behind those appearances are years of ordinary decisions repeated faithfully. Bills reviewed, plans adjusted, goals clarified, risks evaluated, knowledge expanded, nothing dramatic, everything important. There is another misconception that deserves attention. Many people believe wealth creates freedom from responsibility. In reality, mature wealth usually creates greater responsibility. Responsibility toward family, toward employees, toward future generations, toward communities, toward opportunities that would never exist without careful stewardship. Money expands influence. Character determines how that influence is used. This is why wisdom always matters more than wealth alone. Without wisdom, resources disappear. With wisdom, even modest resources continue multiplying their impact. One teacher once explained this idea through the image of a lighthouse. A lighthouse cannot stop storms. It cannot calm the sea. It cannot change the weather. Its purpose is simpler. It provides steady guidance while everything else becomes uncertain. Financial principles should function exactly like that lighthouse. Markets may rise, markets may fall, technology may accelerate, governments may change. Unexpected events will certainly occur. Your principles remain steady. Spend intentionally, protect wisely, learn continuously, act patiently, build consistently. Those principles become lights visible even during the darkest financial nights. Many people spend enormous energy predicting tomorrow. Wise people spend equal energy preparing for many possible tomorrows. Prediction has limits. Preparation has remarkable flexibility. If tomorrow becomes prosperous, preparation supports growth. If tomorrow becomes difficult, preparation supports resilience. Either way, thoughtful planning continues serving its purpose. That is extraordinary. There is profound freedom in no longer needing the future to unfold exactly as you hoped. Instead, you quietly become capable of adapting to whatever unfolds. Adaptability has become one of the greatest financial assets of the modern world. Entire industries now transform within a few years. Artificial intelligence reshapes professions. Global markets react instantly. Information travels faster than ever before. Yet one principle refuses to become outdated. Those who continue learning continue growing. Knowledge compounds just as investments do. Every book read, every thoughtful conversation, every financial lesson honestly learned, every mistake carefully examined, they accumulate. Eventually, your judgment becomes one of your greatest assets. Nobody can take disciplined judgment away from you. Markets can fall. Businesses can struggle. Careers can change. Good judgment continues creating opportunities. That may be the most valuable investment of all. Imagine two people receiving exactly the same amount of money. One possesses financial discipline. The other does not. 10 years later, their lives may look completely different. Not because the money changed, because the thinking guiding the money changed. Money amplifies character. It rarely replaces it. This is encouraging. It means your future is not determined only by your current resources. It is shaped every day by your current decisions. Every careful habit strengthens tomorrow. Every lesson applied becomes another advantage. Every unnecessary risk avoided quietly protects possibilities not yet visible. One elderly entrepreneur once reflected on his career near retirement. When asked which investment had produced the greatest return, everyone expected him to name a company or a piece of real estate. Instead, he answered something beautifully simple. He said the greatest investment he ever made was becoming the kind of person capable of making wise decisions repeatedly. His businesses changed, his industries changed, his investments changed, his principles remained. That consistency became his greatest advantage. Perhaps that is the real insurance secret. Not a contract, not a financial product, not a strategy available only to the wealthy. The deepest secret is building a life where wisdom protects every opportunity before opportunity ever arrives. Because once your thinking changes, every future dollar enters a different environment. Every decision becomes more intentional. Every risk becomes more understandable. Every opportunity becomes easier to evaluate. The greatest transformation is rarely external. It begins quietly inside the person making the decisions. As you reflect on everything we have explored so far, remember that financial mastery is not measured by how impressive your life appears during easy seasons. It is measured by how peacefully, patiently, and purposefully you continue moving forward when life refuses to follow your plans. That kind of strength cannot be purchased overnight. It is earned through countless ordinary decisions made with extraordinary consistency. And as we continue this journey, we are about to explore the invisible relationship between confidence and preparation. Because the calmest people in the room are rarely the luckiest. More often than not, they are simply the ones who spent years building foundations strong enough that even uncertainty itself became something they could walk through with quiet conviction instead of fear. Confidence has a language of its own. It is rarely loud. It does not need to announce itself. It does not rush into every conversation searching for validation. Real confidence often appears as patience. The patience to wait, the patience to listen, the patience to prepare, the patience to decline opportunities that do not fit your values, even when everyone around you insists they are too good to miss. That kind of confidence cannot be borrowed. It must be built, brick by brick, decision by decision, year after year. When people observe someone who appears financially calm, they often assume that person has simply avoided hardship. More often, the opposite is true. Calm usually belongs to people who have already faced uncertainty enough times to understand something important. Fear becomes smaller when preparation becomes larger. Think about a firefighter entering a burning building. The confidence you see is not based on believing fire is harmless. It comes from thousands of hours of training, equipment inspected repeatedly, procedures practiced until they become instinct, teams learning to trust one another under pressure. Preparation transforms fear into disciplined action. Financial resilience follows the same principle. You cannot remove uncertainty from life. You can become increasingly prepared to meet it. That realization changes your relationship with money. Instead of seeing every dollar as something meant to satisfy today's desires, you begin seeing each dollar as a future decision waiting to be made. Every resource becomes a choice. Will this strengthen my future? Will it create flexibility? Will it reduce unnecessary pressure? Will it help the people I love? These questions quietly reshape priorities. Many people spend years trying to increase income while overlooking the quality of their financial decisions. Income certainly matters, but wisdom determines how long income continues serving your life. Imagine filling a beautiful wooden barrel with fresh water. Now imagine that barrel contains several tiny cracks. At first, the leaks seem insignificant. A few drops here, a few drops there, nothing alarming. But weeks pass, months pass, years pass. Eventually, the barrel stands nearly empty, not because the water stopped arriving, because the leaks were ignored. Financial leaks rarely announce themselves dramatically. Subscriptions forgotten, interest paid unnecessarily, taxes poorly planned, risks left unmanaged, purchases made emotionally, promises accepted without understanding consequences. None of these decisions feel catastrophic alone. Together, they quietly shape entire futures. This is why disciplined people regularly inspect their financial barrels, not because they expect disaster, because they understand maintenance is far less expensive than repair. One experienced craftsman once explained why old wooden bridges often survive longer than newer structures. He said they are constantly observed. Every loose board receives attention. Every weak beam is reinforced before failure spreads. The bridge survives because someone keeps caring for it. Your financial life deserves that same attention. Small reviews, small improvements, small corrections, repeated consistently. Many people believe financial freedom arrives on one unforgettable day. The truth is usually much quieter. Freedom often appears gradually. The first month, when an unexpected bill creates inconvenience instead of panic. The first investment held patiently through market volatility. The first year when financial goals become habits instead of wishes. The first time you decline an opportunity because it conflicts with your long-term principles rather than because you feel pressured. Those moments rarely receive applause, yet they represent extraordinary progress. They reveal something changing beneath the surface, character becoming stronger than circumstance. One fascinating observation appears again and again among families that preserve wealth for generations. They teach judgment before they transfer money. Children learn responsibility before inheritance. They learn patience before abundance. They learn stewardship before ownership. Without those lessons, money often disappears. With those lessons, even modest resources continue creating opportunity. Knowledge protects wealth. Character protects knowledge. Discipline protects character. Everything strengthens everything else. This is why true financial education extends far beyond numbers. It teaches emotional control, delayed gratification, critical thinking, integrity, adaptability. These qualities quietly influence every financial decision ever made. Consider the changing world around us. Entire professions now evolve within a decade. Technology replaces repetitive tasks. Artificial intelligence accelerates productivity. Global competition expands every year. In such an environment, certainty becomes increasingly rare. Adaptability becomes increasingly valuable. Prepared people rarely fear change as deeply as unprepared people. They expect change. They build systems flexible enough to absorb it. That flexibility becomes one of their greatest competitive advantages. Think about bamboo during a storm. Massive trees sometimes break because they refuse to bend. Bamboo survives because strength and flexibility exist together. Financial resilience requires the same balance. Strong principles, flexible strategies, firm values, adaptable methods. Those combinations endure remarkable pressure. There is another reason thoughtful protection matters. It preserves dignity. Financial emergencies often force people into decisions they never wanted to make. Selling cherished assets, accepting unfair employment, ending promising ventures too early, borrowing under painful conditions. Preparation cannot prevent every hardship, but it often preserves the ability to choose with dignity instead of desperation. Choice is one of life's greatest luxuries. Not unlimited choice, meaningful choice. The ability to pause, to evaluate, to negotiate, to wait. That freedom is purchased long before it becomes necessary. A wise investor once described wealth using an image that has remained with me ever since. He said, "Wealth is not a castle built to impress strangers. It is a shelter built to protect the people you love." Castles prioritize appearance. Shelters prioritize purpose. Appearance fades. Purpose endures. Every financial decision becomes clearer once purpose leads the conversation. Why am I building this? Who benefits from my discipline? What future am I creating through today's choices? Questions like these elevate money beyond mathematics. They connect it to meaning. Perhaps that is why some people become wealthy without ever feeling secure, while others, possessing far less, experience remarkable peace. Security does not come only from numbers. It grows from confidence that your life rests upon principles capable of surviving changing circumstances. That confidence cannot be purchased. It is earned quietly, patiently, repeatedly. If this chapter has encouraged you to think more deeply about the relationship between preparation and peace, carry one image with you throughout the coming days. Imagine your financial life as a bridge that future generations may one day cross. Every careful decision you make today strengthens the path beneath their feet. Even when nobody notices the work, the bridge quietly becomes safer, stronger, and more capable of carrying dreams that have not yet been imagined. Because we are approaching one of the most meaningful discoveries of this entire journey. The greatest reward of wise financial planning is not becoming richer than other people. It is becoming increasingly independent from fear itself, until money finally returns to its proper place as a servant of your values instead of the master of your decisions, allowing every opportunity, every challenge, and every season of life to be approached with a steadiness that no market fluctuation can ever fully take away. There is a quiet freedom that cannot be purchased in a luxury store. It cannot be measured by the size of a house. It cannot be recognized by the badge on a car. It is the freedom to make decisions because they are right, not because circumstances leave you no alternative. That kind of freedom changes the way a person walks through life. When fear no longer controls every financial choice, something remarkable happens. Your attention returns to what truly matters. You become a better parent because your mind is present instead of constantly calculating bills. You become a stronger business owner because every conversation is no longer driven by urgency. You become a wiser investor because patience replaces panic. Most importantly, you become someone capable of seeing opportunities hidden behind temporary uncertainty. History has always rewarded people who remained clear while everyone else became emotional. Think back to moments when entire markets seemed consumed by fear. Businesses closed. Headlines predicted disaster. Ordinary conversations revolved around uncertainty. Yet, quietly, somewhere in the background, disciplined people were asking different questions. What valuable assets are temporarily misunderstood? Which businesses will still matter 10 years from now? How can today's uncertainty become tomorrow's opportunity? Notice they were not celebrating difficult times. They were simply prepared for them. Preparation changes perspective. Where others see only crisis, prepared minds also see possibility. This does not happen because they possess extraordinary courage. It happens because preparation creates emotional distance. When survival is secure, wisdom has room to breathe. Imagine standing on the shore watching waves crash against massive cliffs. The waves appear powerful. They roar, they rise, they fall. Year after year they return. Yet the cliffs remain, not because they resist every wave individually, because they were formed over immense stretches of time. Financial character resembles those cliffs. Daily headlines are waves. Economic cycles are waves. Political changes are waves. Temporary trends are waves. Strong principles become the cliff. They remain while everything else continues moving. This is why disciplined people rarely build their lives around predictions. Predictions change. Principles endure. There is another truth worth carrying with you. Every financial decision teaches your mind something. Every purchase, every investment, every promise, every moment of patience, every moment of impulse. You are constantly training yourself. If you repeatedly reward emotional decisions, emotions gradually become your financial advisor. If you repeatedly reward thoughtful analysis, wisdom slowly assumes that role. Character is built through repetition. Money simply reveals what repetition has already created. One experienced sailor explained that storms never build character. They reveal it. Preparation happened long before the clouds appeared. The ropes were maintained, the sails inspected, the crew trained, navigation understood. When the storm finally arrived, the outcome depended far more upon yesterday's preparation than today's emotions. Financial storms follow the same law. The choices you make during calm seasons quietly determine how much freedom you possess during difficult ones. That realization is empowering. It means every thoughtful decision today becomes a gift waiting for your future self. Perhaps the greatest mistake modern society encourages is confusing appearance with achievement. Someone may appear wealthy while carrying enormous pressure behind closed doors. Someone else may live modestly while quietly possessing extraordinary stability. Never allow appearances to define success. A magnificent tree is admired because of its height. Its survival depends upon roots nobody ever sees. Respect the roots. There is something deeply comforting about knowing you do not need to impress the world in order to build a remarkable future. The strongest financial lives often grow quietly. No constant announcements, no dramatic declarations, just ordinary discipline repeated faithfully, month after month, year after year. Think about the builders of ancient cathedrals. Many spent their entire lives working on structures they would never see completed. They understood something modern culture often forgets. Meaningful work is not measured only by immediate results. Sometimes it is measured by foundations future generations will stand upon. Financial stewardship deserves that same long view. Every responsible decision today creates possibilities for people you may never even meet. Your children, their children, employees whose livelihoods depend upon wise leadership, communities strengthened by businesses that survive difficult decades. The ripple effects of thoughtful financial decisions extend far beyond personal comfort. That is why integrity belongs in every conversation about money. Integrity is invisible when times are easy. Its value becomes unmistakable when pressure arrives. Promises kept, responsibilities honored, people treated fairly. These qualities create trust. Trust creates opportunity. Opportunity creates prosperity. Notice how often the greatest financial advantages begin with qualities that cannot be purchased. Reputation, reliability, discipline, patience, humility, curiosity. These assets appreciate throughout an entire lifetime. Nobody can inflate them away. Markets cannot erase them. Technology cannot replace them. They remain valuable in every generation. As artificial intelligence transforms industries and automation reshapes employment, these deeply human qualities become even more significant. Knowledge is becoming easier to access. Judgment remains rare. Information grows abundant. Wisdom still requires practice. Opportunities increase. Discernment becomes increasingly valuable. Those willing to keep learning will continue adapting regardless of how rapidly the world changes. One mentor offered advice to a room full of young entrepreneurs that I have never forgotten. He said, "Your first responsibility is not becoming rich. It is becoming trustworthy with whatever resources already pass through your hands." Because life has a remarkable habit of expanding responsibility for those who consistently handle small responsibilities well. That wisdom reaches far beyond money. It applies to relationships, leadership, health, time, attention. Stewardship is never limited to finances. It becomes a way of living. Perhaps that is the deepest lesson hidden beneath everything we have explored together. The insurance secret was never about discovering a magical financial shortcut. It was never about avoiding all risk. It was never about finding one perfect strategy capable of guaranteeing wealth. The real secret is learning to build a life where uncertainty no longer controls your decisions, where preparation becomes a quiet habit instead of an occasional reaction, where every dollar is treated with respect because every dollar represents hours of your life, opportunities for your future, and responsibilities toward people who trust you. When you reach that point, something beautiful happens. Money stops being a source of constant anxiety. It becomes a tool, a patient tool, a purposeful tool, a servant of values instead of a master of emotions. And that transformation is worth far more than any temporary increase in income. Before we continue deeper into this journey, I want you to pause for one honest reflection. If someone 10 years younger than you asked for one financial lesson that could spare them years of unnecessary struggle, what would you tell them? Hold that answer carefully. It may reveal not only what you have learned, but also the principle you are now ready to live more consistently yourself. Because the final chapters of this audiobook are not about accumulating more information. They are about weaving every lesson into one enduring philosophy, a way of thinking capable of guiding your decisions through prosperity and adversity alike, until wealth is no longer defined by what sits inside your accounts, but by the calm, clarity, resilience, and purpose with which you continue building a life that becomes stronger with every passing season. If someone asked you to describe wealth in one sentence, what would you say? Would you describe numbers, properties, investments, freedom? Or would you describe peace? That question matters more than it first appears, because the answer reveals the destination toward which your financial life is already moving. Many people spend decades climbing a ladder without ever asking whether it leans against the right wall. They sacrifice health for income, relationships for recognition, peace for possessions. Only later do they discover that success achieved without balance quietly creates another kind of poverty. Real wealth refuses that bargain. It seeks growth without abandoning wisdom, security without surrendering purpose, prosperity without losing integrity. Imagine walking through an old city just before sunrise. The streets are empty. The buildings have stood for centuries. Empires have risen and fallen around them. Generations have lived, struggled, celebrated, and disappeared. Yet the stones remain. What allowed them to survive? Not because they escaped storms, because they were built to endure them. Every lasting structure shares that same story. Strength is rarely visible on the surface. It exists beneath it. Foundations do not attract attention. They deserve gratitude. The same is true for every strong financial life. People notice visible achievements. They rarely notice the invisible habits, the monthly review of expenses, the patient refusal to chase every trend, the difficult conversation about estate planning, the quiet discipline of living slightly below one's means even after income increases, the willingness to continue learning long after formal education ends. Those habits never become headlines, yet they quietly determine who remains standing after enough years have passed. One businessman was once asked how he managed to stay optimistic despite decades filled with economic downturns, changing industries, and unexpected setbacks. He answered with remarkable simplicity. He said he never placed his confidence in circumstances. He placed it in his ability to adapt. That answer deserves careful thought. Confidence built upon circumstances is fragile. Circumstances change. Confidence built upon adaptability grows stronger every time life becomes unpredictable, because every challenge becomes another opportunity to practice resilience. This is why lifelong learning has become one of the greatest forms of financial protection available today. Markets evolve, technology accelerates, entire professions transform. But the person who continues learning carries something that appreciates regardless of changing conditions: the ability to create value. That ability cannot easily be replaced. Knowledge creates opportunity. Wisdom determines which opportunities deserve attention. The two together become incredibly powerful. There is another lesson that often arrives only with experience. Not every opportunity deserves pursuit. Early in life, many people believe success means saying yes to everything. Every investment, every business proposal, every partnership, every invitation promising quick results. Eventually, maturity teaches something different. Every meaningful yes requires protecting your ability to say no. No preserves focus. No protects energy. No safeguards time. No prevents resources from being scattered across too many directions. A river gains strength because it flows within banks. Without boundaries, it becomes a flood. Money behaves similarly. Direction creates power. Distraction creates waste. One family office advisor once described wealth using the image of an orchestra preparing for a performance. The audience hears beautiful music. Behind that beauty exists discipline. Every musician understands timing. Every instrument enters at the proper moment. Nobody competes to become louder than everyone else. Harmony creates greatness. Financial lives deserve similar harmony. Income, savings, protection, investments, learning, generosity, purpose. None should compete against one another. Each should support the others. The strongest lives are rarely built around maximizing one area while neglecting everything else. Balance creates endurance. Endurance creates legacy. Legacy is another word often misunderstood. Many assume legacy means leaving behind enormous wealth. Sometimes it does. More often, it means leaving behind better thinking. Imagine two children inheriting exactly the same amount of money. One also inherits patience, discipline, humility, and financial wisdom. The other inherits only the money. 10 years later, the difference may become astonishing. Money without wisdom often disappears. Wisdom eventually recreates money. That is why the greatest inheritance is rarely financial alone. It is intellectual, emotional, moral, practical. Parents teach children how to think long before they teach them how to invest. Leaders teach teams how to respond before crises ever arrive. Communities teach values before prosperity tests them. Everything important begins internally before becoming visible externally. As you have listened through these chapters, perhaps you have noticed a pattern quietly emerging. Every meaningful financial principle ultimately leads back to personal character. Discipline protects income. Humility encourages learning. Integrity strengthens relationships. Patience multiplies opportunity. Responsibility preserves freedom. Character quietly becomes the engine behind every lasting financial result. That realization is deeply encouraging, because character remains available to everyone, regardless of age, regardless of current income, regardless of where life began. No market crash can erase integrity. No recession can eliminate discipline. No economic cycle can prevent curiosity. Those assets remain available every morning, one thoughtful decision at a time. There is something profoundly hopeful about that truth. You do not need to control the economy in order to improve your future. You do not need perfect timing. You do not need extraordinary luck. You need consistent wisdom applied faithfully over long periods. That approach may appear slower. History suggests it is remarkably durable. Think again about the opening of this journey. You were told that almost everyone learns how to earn money. Far fewer learn how to protect it. One thoughtful action became the foundation for countless opportunities that followed. That is how fortunes are really built, not through luck, not through perfect timing, but through thousands of intelligent decisions connected together by one clear purpose. Never forget that money itself is never the destination. Freedom is. Freedom to spend time with the people you love. Freedom to say no to opportunities that compromise your values. Freedom to help someone without expecting anything in return. Freedom to sleep peacefully because your future is built on preparation instead of hope. That is the kind of wealth worth pursuing. As you leave this audiobook, do not rush to change everything overnight. Choose one improvement, one conversation, one habit, one financial leak to close, one layer of protection to strengthen, one investment in your knowledge. Then repeat the process again and again and again, because consistency has a quiet magic that excitement can never replace. Years from now, people may look at your life and call you fortunate. They may believe you were simply in the right place at the right time. Smile when they say it. You will know the truth. They are seeing the harvest. They never witnessed the seasons of preparation. They never saw the discipline that nobody celebrated. They never saw the nights you chose wisdom over comfort. The greatest victories are often invisible until they become impossible to ignore. So keep building, keep learning, keep protecting, keep investing, keep growing. Not because you are chasing more, but because you are becoming more. And remember the lesson that brought us together from the very beginning. The greatest financial advantage is not eliminating risk. It is becoming the kind of person who knows how to prepare for it, learn from it, and transform it into opportunity. That is the insurance secret, not hidden inside a policy, not reserved for millionaires, hidden inside a disciplined mind, a patient heart, and a lifetime of wise decisions. May your wealth always serve your purpose. May your purpose always guide your wealth. And may every season ahead leave you stronger, wiser, calmer, and more generous than the season before. Thank you for sharing this journey. Until we meet again, keep building the future your family will one day thank you for. Because the richest life is not the one that accumulates the most. It is the one that leaves behind the greatest legacy of wisdom, courage, opportunity, and hope. And that legacy begins with the very next decision you make.